Hi, I'm Karlee Scott-Murphy, Global Product Specialist for the Employee Experience here at Microsoft. I'm of Australian descent with shoulder-length brown hair, wearing a blue top and my trademark red lipstick. In this three-part series, we'll explore the opportunities and challenges of skilling in a hybrid world. Specifically, we'll be looking at the value that simplifying the learning experience brings, unpacking the digital skills shortage, and also looking at the trends we're seeing in both the public and private sector. Plus, we'll dive into Viva Learning, where we look at how we can simplify the learning experience for employees, how we can surface content that's personalised and relevant, and more importantly, how we bring learning into the flow of work. In this first instalment, I'm joined by Jonathan Stevenson and Sarah September. Jonathan.
Thanks, Karlee. Hi, everyone. My name is Jonathan Stevenson. I am the skilling lead for Microsoft in Australia and New Zealand. I'm an Australian male with strawberry blonde hair. I'm wearing a blue-green blazer with a white shirt.
And Sarah.
Thanks, Karlee. My name's Sarah September. I'm the practice lead for change and adoption at Engage Squared. I'm an Australian descent female with shoulder-length brown hair, and I'm wearing a white blouse today with a bow.
Jonathan, let's start with you. There's been a lot of discussion about the Great Reshuffle or the Great Resignation out there. How is this impacting the Australian market?
Yeah, it's an incredibly top of mind topic for a lot of professionals out there in my space, in learning and development, as well as in people and culture as well. Australia and New Zealand have been a little bit shielded from the greatest impacts of the Great Reshuffle. We haven't seen the same levels that we've seen in the US, but that's not an opportunity to be complacent. I look at surveys coming out of organisations like PwC, who tell us that out of 1,800 Australian workers they surveyed through September and October, 38% indicated they were considering new opportunities or changing roles within the next 12 months. And we're also seeing data on LinkedIn indicate that hiring is increasing compared to the same levels in October last year or even against 2019 pre-pandemic. When we look at the groups most affected by the Great Reshuffle, both locally and abroad, there are really two camps that come to mind. The first are professionals that were shielded from disruption when it comes to their work, but did ultimately change where they were doing their work for the most part. So people working in technology, working in financial services, typical office-based roles that went from being in the office 9 to 5 to completely remote for the better part of 2 years. And the second camp that's been most affected are those that have been completely disrupted. So people in the retail sector, frontline workers, all those sorts of individuals that have had either their roles completely upended and changed or have unfortunately lost employment through the course of the pandemic. What this has led to, is a rethinking that a lot of workers are doing in the marketplace around what work they want to do, where they want to do that work, and ultimately seeking out opportunity that's going to speak to their values and ultimately where they want to get work done.
Sarah, we know most organisations have quite a robust and embedded practice in terms of learning, particularly around the area of onboarding. What challenges are you seeing around upskilling in the workforce?
Thanks, Karlee. Much of the transferable skills we learn during our career happen outside of the major employee milestones. This is because very few organisations have a digital skilling plan that encompasses different role types and continuous changes in the market. So there's a few challenges that we see here. Firstly, it's difficult to cater for everybody's learning journey. Second, leaders are out of touch with what employees need for growth, and they don't have continuous learning that they need themselves. And thirdly, there is a lot of diverse content sitting on a lot of different platforms, so it's hard for employees to get access to the right content.
That's so true, Sarah, and I think one of the things that I talk about a lot in work is that one-on-one time with managers and the importance of that to understand what employees need as part of their experiences as well, not just for new starters, but also for existing employees. And going back to Jonathan's point, right, about engaging employees and the Great Reshuffle, all of this is so important. Are there any specific challenges we're seeing in the public sector?
So most of the challenges that I mentioned previously are issues within the public sector. But government certainly has its own unique challenges. For example, the frequent occurrence of agencies merging and demerging. So what we need there is a baseline of transferable skills so that people can move through those roles and still have skills that touch on each. The other end of the spectrum is around employees specialising in niche parts of the public sector, such as policy creation. So what this actually creates is a bit of a skilling debt.
So in public sector, I know that there's a high volume of contractors that move around. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
So the challenges that are being faced by contractors, obviously they need to get upskilled quickly, they need to go through things like onboarding quickly, and then at the other end of the spectrum, when they're leaving, we need to make sure that their skills and knowledge is transferred back over into people's roles who exist within the public sector.
Jonathan, back to you. How are organisations changing their perspective on the value of investing in learning?
Hugely. There is a renewed focus on not just learning and development, but the entire employee experience. We know that hybrid work is here to stay. It's going to be a carryover from the pandemic. People have gotten used to working from home or working in places maybe that they've had a sea change towards. And as a result of that, people like myself in learning and development are thinking now about how do we create a world-class employee experience that speaks to well-being, learning, and everything that's sort of encompassed within that, so we can ensure that we're retaining and attracting great talent in the midst of this great reshuffle that I talked about before. The challenges that Sarah mentioned earlier, I completely agree with, because one of the things that I'm thinking about a lot is how do I create a learning experience that reaches the scale and diversity of employee base that are sitting all over the world, often in remote locations. Gone are the days where we can have training workshops just simply in classrooms here in our beautiful office space. And so we've really got to think about how do we create digital learning experiences for a hybrid world, as well as how do we think about learning in the flow of work as well, because we need to make sure that learning is an intrinsic part of people's roles, not an extrinsic sort of add-on that sits outside of that. So really interesting times ahead for us.
And finally, Sarah, can you talk us through some of the steps that organisations need to think about when they're implementing something like Viva Learning?
There's three major points that I want to make here. The first point is around change. We need to invest in change and adoption activities to really ensure that we're taking our employees through that experience of change and supporting them through that process.
Do you know what? I think that's really amazing to hear that, because a lot of customers don't, they might just kind of have a little bit of investment, right? But really thinking about that adoption and change management is super important, right?
Absolutely, especially in the area of technology. So any new technology is great. Companies are investing in new technology, which is fantastic. But if you don't have your employees actually using the technology and understanding how to use it, you will actually lose that investment. So we need to make sure that we're investing in the right activities to support that employee base. The second point is around governance. So we need to ensure that we're supporting businesses to put in place appropriate governance controls, security controls that really help to enhance the employee experience.
And the third point?
Third point is around managers. So we absolutely know from a lot of research that senior managers really need to embrace and lead from the front. So what we need them to do is be supportive of change and helping to roll that out from the top. So they need to be talking the talk, they need to understand what's changing, and they really need to support the businesses and their employees through that change process.
Yeah, look, that's super important. I think one of the things that I've seen a lot or heard about a lot is really managers kind of saying one thing and saying, you know, learning is important. We have learning days here at Microsoft, but you know, if you have a manager who's like, well, let's disregard that and let's schedule a whole bunch of meetings, that's not leading by example, right? So that's kind of what you're referring to.
Absolutely. We want them to also be upskilling and supporting themselves, because we know that managers also aren't feeling like they have the right capability to do their roles. So it's ensuring that they're putting in that learning time within their calendar and they're actually actioning on that as well. So making sure that they're supporting their team to take that time out to upskill in the necessary areas and increase their growth.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Jonathan. Thank you so much, Sarah, for your insights. If you'd like to know more about Viva Learning, check out our second video, or please get in touch with us to find out more about learning in your organisation.